Fangs Detective Agency. I don't know who needs to hear this, but vampires are real. Surprise. And yeah, I'm one of them. No, the sun doesn't kill us. It just turns us into anemic, hungover zombies who'd rather be anywhere, but under direct light. Garlic? Doesn't do jack. But bad breath is a crime against nature, and I will judge you accordingly. Holy water? Let's be real. Most of that stuff is just tap water some guy blessed in a bathtub. If you're getting splashed with church sink juice, the real threat is whatever bacteria is floating around in it. And if you even ask me about sparkling, I'll personally introduce you to the business end of a wooden bat. I'm Joe Ballore, EI. Run Fangs Detective Agency, our slogan? Taking a bite out of crime one neck at a time. Catchy, right? Yeah, real shame that business sucks, and I don't mean in the fun, neck-draining kind of way. See, I don't exactly play nice with the local undead elite. The Vampire Council? Bunch of old power-hungry parasites who spend their time deciding which of their own they should screw over next. The clans? Think mafia, but with worse attitudes and longer grudges. Most vampires pick a side, fall in line, and live forever under some powerful bastard's thumb. Me? I pick fights with the wrong people. I run a one-man operation in a city that's filled to the brim with supernatural politics, backroom deals, and bodies nobody ever finds. I do dirty jobs for bad people, because the only thing keeping me from becoming another bloodstain on some councilman's expensive rug is the fact that I can solve problems they don't want anyone else knowing about. Tonight was no different. Rain came down in sheets. The city smelled like wet pavement and regret. And I was already down to my last cigarette. A job under the table a Fangs Detective Agency, case number 873. The jazz club smelled like old money, expensive whiskey, and desperation. Three things that made me itchy. The lighting was dim enough to keep a weak vampire like me from getting a headache, but bright enough that I could see all the assholes I owed money to. A six-piece band played something slow and full of brass while well-dressed corpses sipped overpriced plasma in corner booths, and right in the middle of it all, looking like he belonged in a sepia-toned campaign poster, sat Senator Victor Demarest. I slid into the booth across from him, brushing my trench coat back to keep it from catching on the seat. I like to pretend it makes me look mysterious instead of just tired. Demarest didn't waste time on pleasantries. I need a problem solved, Mr. Ballore. They call me Joe. I flagged down a waitress and pointed at Demarest's glass. Whatever, he's having, but cheaper. The senator didn't laugh. They never do. I assume you've heard of Elena Cruz, he said, lowering his voice. I had. She was the kind of journalist that made people nervous, and not just the blood-sucking kind. If she sniffed out something rotten, she'd sink her teeth in and shake until the truth spilled out. She's been writing a story on vampire influence in politics, Demarest continued, and he hesitated, which told me the next part was really gonna bite. You banged her. I leaned back. And now someone's got proof. Demarest clenched his jaw so tight I half expected his fangs to snap. A love letter I wrote to her was stolen. It contains sensitive information. Whistled. Let me guess, you weren't just whispering sweet nothings in her ear. You put some real juicy vampire secrets in there. Maybe some fun facts about backroom deals with the council? The senator didn't confirm or deny, which told me everything. The letter is now being used to blackmail me, he said. I need you to recover it. Who's doing the blackmailing? If I knew that, I wouldn't need you. Fair. And Cruz? Where is she? She's missing. Of course she was. I rubbed my temples. This had terrible idea written all over it, but my rent was late and my blood supply was running low. Fine. I'll find your letter, I'll find your girl, and I'll find whoever's got their hands in your pockets, but I expect payment up front. Demarest slid a gold money clip across the table, full of crisp bills. I tucked it into my coat. Now we're talking. I stood, finishing off my drink. I'll be in touch, Senator. Try not to get staked while I'm gone. He didn't laugh at that either. Part 2. The investigation begins. Elena Cruz's apartment smelled like a place where someone stopped being in control of their own fate, and not in the fun, bourbon-fueled way. The stink of cheap cologne hung in the air. Someone had been here recently. Someone who wanted to mask their scent but didn't have a vampire's nose to know they'd failed. Stale coffee, burnt toast, and the distinct metallic tang of fear sweat clung to the walls. The door had been locked. The window hadn't. I landed lightly on the floor, brushing dust off my trench coat. Most humans don't look up, and most of them definitely don't expect a malnourished PI vampire with bad attitude and worse life choices to crawl up their fire escape. But someone had expected a visitor. The apartment was a wreck. Not the messy journalist kind, I mean turned over furniture, drawers yanked out and dumped, couch cushions knifed open kind. Either whoever was here before me was looking for something specific, or they had anger issues and a pathological hatred for home decor. The desk was the real story. Papers, files on political figures. Damaris wasn't the only bloodsucker with skeletons in his closet. Sticky notes crammed with shorthand, question marks, and circled names, and then tucked under the desk, something that didn't belong. Recording device. I pressed play. Elena's voice came through, sharp, angry, full of that I'm too damn close to stop now kind of energy. I know what you are. I know what you're hiding. And I know who's been pulling the strings. If you think I'll back down, you don't know me at all. Then a crash. The door bursting open. The sound of a struggle. A muffled scream. Then silence. I let out a long breath. If she was still breathing, well, unbreathing, she was in a hell of a lot of trouble. A shuffling noise behind me. I turned fast, fangs bared. Nothing. But the air was wrong. A whisper of motion. A scent, faint but distinct, grave dirt and wet. High ghoul stink. I wasn't alone in here. The blackmailer's demand. By the time I got back to my office, the package was waiting, sitting dead center on my desk, like an invitation. No postage, no return address, just a plain brown envelope. I closed the blinds before opening it. Some things are better handled in the dark. Inside, a crisp, photocopied version of the letter. Damaris's words in bold ink, practically sweating. Guilt. A note, typewritten like someone had a flair for the dramatic. Meet me at the Blood Moon. And last, the cherry on this already rotten Sunday. A lock of Elena Cruz's hair. Dark strands tied with a silk ribbon. Not good. The Blood Moon was trouble. A vampire-run speakeasy that catered to the kind of clientele that made back-alley deals look like lemonade stands. You wanted a hitman, a blood debt settled, a curse lifted, or just a very expensive bottle of imported werewolf marrow? The Blood Moon was where you went. You also went there if you had a death wish. The fact that someone wanted to meet me there? Bad. The fact that they were dangling Elena's life like a worm on a hook? Worse. I stared at the lock of hair. Then I grabbed my coat. If someone wanted to play games, they'd just invited the wrong vampire to the table, and I was in the mood to break some rules. The Blood Moon Club. The Blood Moon wasn't a place you stumbled into. It was a place you earned an invitation to, or, if you were really unlucky, a place someone else decided you belonged in for the night. Either way, no one left without owing something to someone, whether it was blood, money, or a favor they'd regret cashing in. The bouncer was a 7-foot-tall werewolf with a scar that looked like someone had tried to carve their initials into his throat. His yellow eyes flicked over me and narrowed. "Balar," he grunted. "Didn't think you were dumb enough to show up here again." "Neither did I, yet here we are," I said. "You gonna let me in, or do we have to reminisce about the time I saved your ass from that wraith in Hell's Kitchen?" He growled but stepped aside. Inside, the club was all red lighting, low ceilings, and the stink of expensive sin. Jazz hummed through the air, but the real music was the sound of deals being made. Whispers over glasses of stolen blood, hushed promises of power, threats wrapped in silk and sealed with handshakes. Witches, vampires, ghouls, things that slithered in shadows. It was a rogues gallery of the supernatural underworld, and all of them were here because they had something to sell, or something they were desperate enough to buy. I wasn't here for either. I was here for Mercer. Part 3. The blackmailer revealed. Mercer was exactly where I expected him to be. The back booth, where the lighting was bad and the air smelled like something had crawled under the floorboards to die. Ghouls aren't like vampires. Vampires get to be pretty. We get the whole immortal, brooding, tragic package. Ghouls, they get corpse stink and a face that looks like it lost a fight with a meat grinder. Mercer had the kind of smile that made you feel like you'd already lost, and he used it when he saw me. "Balor," he drawled, leaning back in his seat. "Thought you were smarter than this." I slid into the booth, ignoring the fact that the seat was probably covered in blood from whoever sat here last. "You've got something that belongs to me," I said. "Let's skip the part where you pretend you don't." Mercer laughed. A wet rotting sound. He tapped a folder on the table. "You mean this?" he said. "Or maybe you mean the girl." I didn't react, which was good because that was exactly what he wanted. "Relax," Mercer said. "She's fine, more or less. Can't say the same for your boy Damaris, though." I glanced at the folder. "So that letter really is more than just a cheap love note." Mercer's smile widened. "Oh, it's so much more." He leaned forward, his breath a toxic wave of grave rot. "Your senator isn't scared of a scandal, Joe. He's scared of the whole house of cards coming down. This little document? It's proof. Centuries of vampire control over human politics. Every dirty deal, every puppet senator, every law pushed through with a few well-placed fangs." He sat back smug. "And I'm selling it to the highest bidder." I exhaled slowly. "You're an idiot." Mercer blinked. "Excuse me? You think this ends with money?" I shook my head. "You auction off that letter and you're not getting paid. You're getting dead." Mercer sneered. "Please, you think I'm scared of the council?" I smiled. Not my usual smile. The other one. "The council?" I said. "Nah. But the people who bought and paid for them? The ones who don't like their secrets getting out? Yeah. You should be terrified." The smug look flickered, but before he could answer, a crash sounded from the VIP section, followed by a scream. A familiar voice. Elena. The twist. The journalist's fate. I was moving before I even thought about it, pushing through the crowd, toward the VIP lounge. The bouncer tried to stop me. He got a face full of elbow and went down choking on his own teeth. Inside, the scene wasn't what I expected. Elena Cruz was there, but she wasn't tied up. She wasn't locked in a cage. She was standing. Her eyes were wrong. That too bright, too hungry gleam of a newborn vampire barely holding onto their sanity. Her skin was pale in a way that had nothing to do with fear, and her fangs were out. She saw me, and something inside her brain clicked into place. "Joe," she whispered. I turned, slow, because I already knew the answer to the question clawing its way up my throat. I looked at Damaris, standing in the corner, watching with something that looked too much like pride for my liking. "You turned her," I said. Damaris didn't deny it. "She was already dead," he said, smooth as ever. "I just gave her a future." My fists clenched. He hadn't wanted to silence her. He'd wanted to keep her. And now if that letter went public, Elena wasn't just leverage, she was a liability. The council would erase every loose end. And she was the biggest loose end of them all. I looked at Elena, a newborn, barely in control. I looked at Mercer, a dead man walking, and I looked at Damaris, who thought he'd already won. I sighed. Then I rolled my shoulders and threw the first punch. A fistful of fangs. Damaris saw the punch coming. He just wasn't fast enough to stop it. My fist connected with his jaw, and the sound it made was wet and expensive, like a designer suit hitting the pavement after a long drop. He staggered, but he didn't go down. Of course not. Old vampires like him, they don't drop easy, but I wasn't looking for a knockout. I was looking to start a fight, and I got one. The second my knuckles left his face, two of his goons moved in. One was a bald bruiser with hands, the size of cinder blocks. The other was a younger, twitchy type, fangs out, eyes wild. New money, new fangs. Dumb enough to think he mattered. The bruiser grabbed for me first. I let him wrap a meaty hand around my collar, yank me forward. Then I dropped my weight, twisted, and let his own strength work against him. He went over my shoulder and straight into a glass table. Shards flew, people screamed. People. Somewhere in the chaos, Mercer was laughing. The twitchy one came next. He was fast but sloppy. All instinct, no experience. He lunged. I sidestepped. He tried again. I let him get real close enough to smell the cheap synthetic blood on his breath. Then I grabbed the back of his head and slammed him face first into the bar. He stopped twitching. Follow for part 4. Part 4. A sucker's bet. The thing about grifters like Mercer, they never bet on a sure thing. They bet on the illusion of a sure thing. Make people think you've got the best hand in the room, and they'll fold before they realize you're bluffing. That's what Mercer was doing. Only problem? I don't fold. You don't get it, do you, Balor? Mercer said, lounging on his stolen throne like a particularly smug corpse. I've already won. He held the letter between two fingers like it was a winning lottery ticket. His enforcers loomed. The ones that hadn't eaten floorboards anyway. The rest of the club had gone quiet. Too many eyes. Too many mouths whispering. Mercer was about to put on a show. If you don't want this little love note making the rounds, Mercer continued, voice all honey and knives, then I suggest you pay up. Big. Or better yet. He grinned, lips peeling back over rotting teeth. Maybe I sell it to someone else. He turned to me, cocky as hell. What do you think, Balor? Maybe a certain private detective might want to outbid his client? I smiled. Sure, Mercer, I said, pulling a manila folder from my coat. That letter's worth a fortune, huh? Mercer's eyes narrowed. I flipped open the folder, held up a second letter. Identical. Perfectly identical. Mercer's grin faltered. Wait. I let the second letter fall to the floor. Then I pulled a third one, dropped it, pulled another, dropped it. One by one, they hit the ground. Each one an exact match. Damaris's eyes widened. The crowd stirred. Mercer? He looked like a man realizing his parachute was a bag of bricks. Fun fact, I said. I know a guy. Real good forger. Had him cook up a dozen of these. Maybe more. Who's to say? Mercer lunged for the original letter, trying to check. Fortell's proof it was the real deal. But by then, didn't matter. The first hit came fast. One of Damaris's goons, a vampire with prison tattoos and a permanent bad mood, grabbed Mercer by the collar and yanked him off his feet. You played. Us? The vampire growled. Mercer sputtered, tried to claw his way out of it. No, Too late. The moment doubt seeped in, the shark smelled blood. The first punch shattered teeth. The second caved in his chest. By the time the third hit landed, Mercer wasn't even screaming anymore. The newborn problem Alina was watching. Eyes too bright, too wild. Her breathing sharp, shallow, like she was trying to hold herself together by sheer willpower. Newborns are unpredictable. And starving newborns. They're a hair's breadth away from ripping out someone's throat. Joe? She whispered. I turned to her slow, hands open, non-threatening. Elena, I said, keeping my voice level. How long's it been since you fed? She swallowed, hard. Didn't answer. Didn't need to. I already knew. Too long. Her fingers twitched, nails elongating just a little. That small involuntary movement newborns make right before they lose control. Damaris was still recovering, dabbing blood off his lip like he was just inconvenienced. She's my responsibility now, he said smoothly. I won't let you interfere. I gritted my teeth. She's not a damn pet. No, Damaris agreed. She's mine. Elena shuddered. I saw it in her eyes, the realization. He hadn't saved her. He'd caged her, and she hated him for it. I turned back to her. You want out of this? Her breath hitched. Simple question, I said. Yes or no? Her fangs dug into her lip, then finally a whisper. Yes. That was all I needed. Then hold on, I muttered. The aftermath. Damaris stared at the mess, then at me. You always this reckless? I exhaled, flicked the last cigarette I had onto. Mercer's twitching remains. Damaris gritted his teeth, then threw a small envelope onto the table. My partial payment. I opened it, felt the lightness of it. You shorted me. Damaris straightened his tie. I'm a politician, he said. It's what we do. I laughed. Yeah? I pulled out a second envelope, tossed it on the table. His eyes flicked to it. What's that? A copy of the letter, I said, one that I actually held on to. His face paled, his voice dropped. You wouldn't. I shrugged. Guess you'll find out. I turned and walked for the exit, my coat still dusty from the fight. Follow for part 5. Final part. Elena's new night. Joe walks out of the blood moon, lighting up a cigarette he doesn't need. Another night. Another mess was cleaned up. But in this city, the blood never really stops flowing. Outside, the night was thick, with rain and regret. Elena was waiting. She had the same look I'd had when I first turned, that stare that says, how the hell do I keep going? Does it get easier? She asked. I exhaled. Nope. She swallowed hard. What do I do? I looked at her. Really looked at her. Tired eyes. A new hunger curling at the edges of her stare. She needed an answer. I could only give her the truth. Sink or swim, kid, I muttered. Just don't end up like the rest of us. She shivered. Then she nodded. When the dust settled, Mercer was dead, the letter was in my pocket, and Damaris was out of a job. I made sure the council saw just enough of that letter to make sure he'd never hold office again. Elena? She was alive, sort of. She wasn't thrilled about her new diet, but she'd learn. Welcome to the afterlife, I told her. First rule, don't trust vampires, especially politicians. She managed, a weak smile. What's the second rule? Never play poker with a ghoul. I cracked my neck. Speaking of which, let's get out of here before someone decides to take a second shot at us. She hesitated. Where are we going? I lit a cigarette, letting the smoke curl around. My fangs. I don't know, but if you stick with me, I guarantee one thing. What's that? I grinned. It'll be a hell of a ride. Another job, another scar. The blood moon was behind me. A new mess was ahead of me. That's the thing about this city. You don't fix it. You just clean up the blood long enough for the next guy to spill more. I flicked my cigarette into the gutter and kept walking. The end.